Mr. President.
The Senator from Washington.
Mr. President, I come to the floor tonight because I want to remind our colleagues and the people of the United States of America, we did pass an infrastructure bill, and it was bipartisan. But we are here tonight because the very people that it takes to implement that bill, the very people that work at the Department of Commerce, the very people who work at the Department of Transportation are being held up in not being able to be fully confirmed by this body to do the work that it takes to implement that legislation. Now, I know this is incredibly important to people across the United States of America because we know how popular that bill was. So my colleagues are with me tonight, two members of the Commerce Committee who worked hard, contributed mightily to the Surface Transportation Act that passed out of the Commerce Committee in a robust bipartisan fashion to come here to the floor, was added with other legislation from other committees. So we're here tonight, myself and my colleague from Montana, who has a state as big as any state in the United States. It probably is the largest state. All I know is it takes me at least an hour to fly over it. So I guarantee you that's a lot of roads. That's a lot of bridges. That's a lot of railroad. That's a lot of infrastructure. And if it's not fixed and it's not taken care of, then the Montana economy is hurt. My colleague from Wisconsin is here, and she played a major role in the infrastructure bill as well. And she made sure that we focused on at-grade crossings and safety of our rail system. Why? Because we have to move products from the Midwest to reach Asian markets. And if they can't get there because they're stuck in congestion, then we aren't going to be competitive as a nation. So it's ridiculous that we're in this position tonight. Ridiculous that there are dozens of nominees for the Department of Transportation and the Department of Commerce that the majority of our colleagues support, but they're being held up by one or two people who don't want to see them move through the process. And I'm talking about nominees that are part of the Federal Railroad Administration, the administrator. We're giving a bunch of money to the Federal Railroad Administration so they can put grants out, authorize this new program for at-grade crossings to improve the speed of moving our product, and people don't want the FRA, the Federal Railroad Administration, to have an administrator. I don't know what possibly could be wrong with that. Someone doesn't want us to have the CFO for the Department of Transportation. The CFO? You don't want us to have a CFO? I mean, how political could the CFO of the Department of Transportation be? I guarantee you, not very political. The CFO is a person that is going to make sure that we spend the money correctly, administer the new programs as they get set up, and make sure the money goes out the door. Hard to imagine a lot of money is going to go out the door at the Department of Transportation if we don't have a CFO. There are other people here that are part of the transportation system on analysis. There are people, I'm pretty sure my colleague from Montana will talk about the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. Why? Again, because I guarantee you there's a lot of trucks in Montana. There's a lot of moving a product, and you have to have trucking safety, and you have to have help with administering that. And if you have to have help with administrating that, then you need to have an administrator of the Federal Motor Carrier Safety Administration. These are basic positions. These are positions that are part of the infrastructure that we need for the Department of Transportation and, as I mentioned, the Department of Commerce. So these are issues that are important to us. And let me just say a few words about Commerce nominees. We have someone who is supposed to do the analysis of industry for the Department of Commerce. We have someone who is supposed to help us with trade and international matters. I'm pretty sure my colleague from Florida who is objecting to some of these nominees is going to say it's about the supply chain. These are the very people that we need for the supply chain. You need the analysis and the construct of the Department of Commerce to say these are the problems that we have with the department moving forward on various issues that we have with our major focus on our infrastructure. So the infrastructure bill provided $1.2 trillion in funding for transportation, for energy, for disparities that we have in our infrastructure, and that has to get spent, and it has to get spent as soon as possible. Markets in China and India are expected to be worth $26 trillion by 2030. But some people think, well, we'll just take that money that we gave to move ahead on our infrastructure, something that's been dilapidated for a long time. That's what people don't understand. Over several administrations, our investment in transportation infrastructure fell to less than 1% of GDP, and we didn't correct it. And the last administration didn't correct it. But this administration came in, a Democratic administration, and said, we're going to correct that, because economists will tell you you're not keeping pace if your infrastructure investment is less than 1%. So now President Biden's going to get that number up over the next several years, and that's the kind of investment we need to make. But we don't need to slow down, because there's a big world economy. 95% of consumers live outside the United States. But okay, let's just take our sweet time in implementing this bill and getting U.S. products to international markets when 95% of consumers are outside the United States. Let's just take our sweet time, because someone wants to object to these nominees, the CFO, the administrator, these people who have been moved out of committee in a bipartisan fashion. So this is a once-in-a-lifetime, once-in-a-generation investment that we have to make, but they have to have people over there to make the investment, and they have to have people to be fully staffed, and we have to make sure that these important steps that the president is taking on supply chain are met. And that is why these issues of working on various logistics of operations, of pricing, of transparency, and overseeing shippers and making sure that some of our largest shippers, are committed to moving cargo during off-peak hours. My colleagues on both sides of the aisle know how important agricultural products being delivered to market on time is to creating, and we need to make sure that our farmers, our people who have U.S. manufactured product, like in the state of Wisconsin, are getting a fair deal on their shipping. And that is why we also have to have the nominee for the Federal Maritime Commission and get somebody on the commission who's going to hold people accountable to make sure that our products get somewhere safely and securely and in a timely fashion. So these issues that we're facing on the supply chain are complex. They're not going to be fixed overnight, but they have to have people in the jobs. They have to have people who are going to answer the questions, work together, and to get this done. President, I ask that it be in order to make the same request with respect to calendar 550, Max Vekich, to be the Federal Maritime Commissioner for a term expiring June 30th, 2026.
Is there objection?
Mr. President.
Senator from Washington.
I think my colleague knows darn well the President of the United States has been doing something about this. That's why he used his leadership to make sure that we made major infrastructure investment so we could move product. That is why he has gotten the ports to work 24 hours to move product more expeditiously. That is why he has been focused on all of the infrastructure needs in moving our country forward and continuing to deal with choke points, whether they're on the highways, our ports, or our rail system. My colleague knows, too, that the Secretary of Transportation and the Secretary of Commerce, who I'm sure he has talked to, are working very diligently on this. I'm sure they are willing to talk to him. There's no secret here. There's an administration and a bipartisan group of people who are working together to try to solve these issues. But there are those on the other side of the aisle, probably those who didn't support the infrastructure investment, who also don't support having people spend the money and make the investments. I'm going to yield to my colleagues who are also here to try to move some of these important nominees to make this investment work in the United States. Mr. President.
Senator from Washington.
My colleague knows very well that just yesterday, the Deputy Secretaries of Commerce and Transportation and Agriculture met with, and may have been via Zoom or on the phone, met with senators to talk exactly what's going on to help work on the supply chain. He knows very well. Now, he may not have liked exactly what he heard in the outcome, but there's no harder working people than the Secretary of Commerce and the Secretary of Transportation at implementing the things that need to be implemented to keep our country moving. The problem is, I think that the senator from Florida may not understand is there is huge upside. We just had a hearing yesterday with all the airlines. We acted on the payroll support program The end result of that has been a big boon to our economy because they were there and in place to capture the upside when the vaccines worked and the flying public returned. And so we, the United States of America, have outdone Europe and Asia and Canada in basically the upside of having our air transportation system now back up into the 90% of capacity. We did that because we acted and we made an investment, and the investment's paying off, and it kept a workforce that otherwise would have been on unemployment benefits. So this administration is working. This administration is working and needs people to help them implement the bill we just passed. The administration has been working with major ports to have night and weekend cargo operations, working with companies to improve the transparency of logistics and pricing, working with shippers to get the cargo and containers in and out of the ports faster. He's urging some of the largest shippers, Walmart, Target, Home Depot, Samsung, FedEx, UPS, to commit to moving cargo during off-peak hours and making those commitments. Two major railroads, Union Pacific and BNSF, announced that they will create new incentives for cargo owners to move cargo during the weekend. CMA CGM, one of the largest carriers, has begun providing $100 discounts on the containers that if they are picked up immediately, so help moving them off the docks. One of the problems is that empty containers have been left on the docks, and this has caused congestion at the ports. And so the administration has worked with these carriers to help incent people who have been part of the shipping system to get that product off of the docks. And we've begun to see positive results of this. This month, the CEOs of major retailers told President Biden that the supply chain conditions have begun to show signs of improvement. This is from the major retailers. So the issues that we're focusing on here, we're talking to two people that are out fixing the problem. You had a chance to talk to their deputies about this. These are people that are definitely available to be talked to about this problem, and yet they're asking us to continue to have a workforce. So, Mr. President, I would ask that it be in order to make the same request with Executive Calendar number 469, Victoria Marie Becher Wassemer to be the CFO of the Department of Transportation.
Is there objection?
Mr.
President.
Senator from Washington.
Mr. President, these nominees that we're talking about are nominees that literally are just the people who are going to help get these things done within the agency. You're basically denying people the ability to have analysis, to talk about competition, to talk about the effective strategies that we need to put in place. The Commerce Committee has had 3 hearings on supply chain. In fact, we've had some fabulous testimony starting in, I think it was February or March, about the supply chain. Fabulous panel of experts about the complexity of what was happening to the supply chain, what our problems were going to be. And one thing was clear is that this isn't an issue for just COVID. This isn't an issue for just this administration. This isn't an issue even for the next, few years. This is an issue about the fact that in the world economy in 2019, prior to the pandemic, something miraculous happened. The population of the world, the majority of the population of the world reached middle class. That meant the majority of people outside the United States were going to be a huge market opportunity for our goods and our products. It's a huge economic opportunity that 95% of consumers are outside the United States. That means we have to get things to those markets cost effectively and competitively. For us in Seattle, the Port of Seattle has to compete with the Port of Vancouver. And the Port of Vancouver and the infrastructure of Canada has made all sorts of infrastructure investment all across Canada with rail and port investment so that they can have the state of the art, so that it can be cheaper to ship through Canada than the United States. The same thing is happening in other parts in South America and other parts of the world. This is about who's going to reach the Asian market and how fast are they going to reach the Asian market. And so the infrastructure investment was critical. It was critical to making sure that our railroads worked, that our ports worked, that our motor carriers had the right people and had the right safety. This was literally upgrading our infrastructure that had been ignored, basically kept on life support for so long. And now we had a president and a bipartisan group of people who are going to make the investment. And so the fact that those agencies now need people, even the next nominee that we're talking about, is just literally about making investments so that they can figure out the strategy moving forward on these individuals. So this isn't a an issue that I don't understand why so many of these nominees my colleague has to object to, because these nominees are individuals that are part of our infrastructure investment, and in this case, part of where we are with the Department of Commerce in understanding what is even happening in the supply chain and what we also want to do. So I ask that it be in order to make the same request with calendar number 355, Grant T. Harris to be Assistant Secretary of Commerce.
Is there objection?
Mr. President.
Senator from Florida.
Mr. President, reserving the right to object. I want to be clear, I like infrastructure. I spend $85 billion on infrastructure. Over $10 billion a year, had a dramatic increase in infrastructure, and part of the reason why we had 1.7 million jobs. I also did a lot of work to try to make sure we increase trade in Florida. We have 15 seaports. I believe in all this. But I also believe we have a supply chain crisis right now. It's not getting better. I'm shocked that my colleague does not want to ask the Secretary of Transportation and Secretary of Commerce to come explain to the American public why this is not getting better. Therefore, I object.
The objection is heard.
Mr. President,
Senator from Washington.
We're here on whatever today is, December 15th. We're here, as Congress careens towards trying to get some work done before we break for the holiday season. And I'm sure that my colleague knows very well where the administration is on getting its nominees. We're not even the only committee who's out here in a weekly basis complaining about the number of nominees that are not allowed to serve, even though they come out of committee with bipartisan support. They're not being allowed to be taken up and acted upon. So we've had people out here from the Foreign Affairs Committee, we've had nominees, we've had various committees, the Help Committee. So now we're just here now talking about the Transportation Committee. So yes, we have a minority within the minority that doesn't want the administration to have the nominees that it needs to get things done, and in this case, it's infrastructure. And the importance of that is that the majority of people voted for infrastructure, the majority of people have voted for these nominees, and these nominees deserve to get in their place so that individuals can do their work. If the senator from Florida didn't want to support the infrastructure bill, doesn't believe that it was done just like he would do it, I would ask him to consider the fact that his colleagues, the majority of whom did support it, are now going to be delayed in getting those resources out the door. Now, maybe that's what he wants. Maybe he's playing a game of the calendar. He's just hoping that those nominees won't ever get into these spots, that it will take forever for us to get these programs implemented. Our economy can't wait for that. Our economy and the investments that we all decided to make can't wait for this kind of gamesmanship. The small businesses that my colleague from Montana talked about can't wait for that gamesmanship. So I guarantee you those secretaries will be in front of the Commerce Committee in the new year at some point in time. I guarantee it. That's what happens around here. I'm pretty sure they'll be asked these questions. I'm sure they're asked these questions every single day. I'm pretty sure they would take a call from my colleague tonight or tomorrow. I'm pretty sure they would have the input from him that he would want to give in these situations. But this is an issue about whether you're for the infrastructure investment and whether you're for making that a reality by having the people that it takes to implement it. And if you don't have CFOs, if you don't have the administrators of the agencies, if you don't have the people that are targeted to do the investment, I'm not sure how you can do it. And one of those nominees, Arun Venkatamaroon, currently serves as a counselor to the Secretary of Commerce on trade and international matters. He has more than 20 years of experience in working on these issues, and it's somebody that could benefit us in this analysis of the challenges that we're facing to get our products into these markets and get these into these markets quickly. So I ask that it be in order to make the same request with respect to executive calendar number 586, Arun Venkatamaroon to be Assistant Secretary of Commerce and Director General of the United States in Foreign Commercial Service.
Is there objection?
Mr. President.
Senator from Florida.
Mr. President, reserving the right to object. You know, one thing that has not been addressed is if this was so important, why did my colleagues go to the majority leader, it's the same party, and ask them to file cloture on these nominees? I still also have never been told why, when I've been asking for this for weeks, why these two secretaries won't show up and tell my citizens why they can't solve the supply chain problem. Therefore, I object.
The objection is heard.
Well, Mr. President,
Senator from Washington.
Mr. President, I think we've had a good discussion of exactly what these individuals, the Secretary of Commerce and Secretary of Transportation, have been doing. They've been making their deputies available to conversations about supply chain. We've had supply chain hearings. We will continue to address this issue. I'm pretty sure they will take his phone call. I'm pretty sure that the reason that we're out here is because when the other side of the aisle holds up so many nominees, there's only so many cloture motions that you can file. But I guess we'll be here this weekend and we'll find out exactly how many cloture motions and how long it will take to continue to get these nominees. I yield the floor.